Daniel Carter once believed the worst humiliation a man could suffer was watching his wife walk out with another man, leaving behind a small child, unpaid bills, and a silence that screamed louder than any argument. He was wrong. True humiliation came years later, under golden chandeliers, surrounded by polished marble and strangers dressed in elegance, while he stood in a cheap, ill-fitting suit at the front of a ceremony hall. Whispers floated through the air like smoke. People said he had sold himself, that he had traded pride for survival, that he had reached so low there was nowhere left to fall. And maybe they were right, because as Daniel looked ahead and saw the woman waiting for him, Olivia Bennet, a billionaire heiress seated in a wheelchair, he felt the full weight of how the world saw him. A failed husband, a desperate father. A man marrying for money. What no one in that room understood was that this day was never meant to test Daniel. It was meant to test everyone else. 3 months before that wedding day, Daniel sat alone at a chipped kitchen table in a dim apartment that smelled faintly of old paint and burnt toast. An eviction notice lay unfolded before him, the words blurring as his eyes filled with exhaustion rather than tears. The refrigerator hummed like it was working overtime just to survive, and the floorboards groaned whenever the building shifted, as if even the apartment was tired of holding together. Lucas was asleep in the next room. Daniel had waited for that moment before opening the envelope, because there were some fears a child should never see reflected in his father's face. 38 years old, warehouse job, no savings, no car, no safety net. The divorce had taken almost everything. His ex-wife had left 2 years earlier, arm in arm with a man who promised her an easier life, leaving Daniel with shared debt, a broken home, and a 7-year-old boy who still believed his mother was just busy. Daniel folded the notice slowly and placed it on the table as if it might break. 2 weeks, $3,000, or they were out. He had already exhausted every favor, every loan, every polite apology. The job barely covered groceries, pride didn't pay rent, and dignity couldn't keep a child warm at night. The next morning, his mother called. She skipped the greetings, skipped concern, went straight to business. She told him to come by that afternoon, said it was important. He went because arguing required energy he no longer had. When he arrived, his mother sat stiffly in the living room beside his older brother Tom. Tom avoided eye contact, which told Daniel everything he needed to know. This wasn't good news. His mother didn't soften the blow. There was a woman, she said, very wealthy, lived on an estate outside the city. Her name was Olivia Bennet. She had been in an accident years ago. She used a wheelchair. She wanted a husband. Not love, his mother clarified. Stability. Someone who wouldn't leave. Daniel laughed at first, a short, sharp laugh that carried more disbelief than humor. Then he realized no one else was laughing. His mother asked him what his plan was instead, how he would keep Lucas housed, how he would keep food on the table. Daniel left without answering. That night, Lucas stood in the kitchen holding a permission slip for a school field trip. $40. A science museum. Lucas tried to smile as he said it was okay if they couldn't afford it. He said he understood. That was the moment something inside Daniel cracked. Because 7-year-old boys should not have to understand disappointment that early. The next day, he made the call. Meeting Olivia felt like stepping into another world. The estate was quiet, massive, immaculate. Everything gleamed, nothing felt lived in. Olivia herself was calm, composed, unreadable. She asked him why he was there, and Daniel told the truth. He didn't beg. He didn't pretend. He said he needed a way to protect his son. She listened, watched, said little. She told him this was an interview, a test. Daniel agreed to continue because the alternative was homelessness. Over the following weeks, Olivia remained distant. formal, precise. All communication filtered through assistants and lawyers. The prenuptial agreement stripped Daniel of any claim, any safety, any illusion that he mattered beyond the role he was expected to play. He signed everything without complaint, because he wasn't there for money. He was there for Lucas. The world, however, didn't see it that way. At work, co-workers mocked him. Neighbors whispered. Family members joked, just loudly enough for him to hear. People called him weak, pathetic, a man who gave up. Daniel absorbed it all in silence. He had learned that arguing with judgment only fed it. Lucas, though, noticed. Kids always do. One afternoon he asked if it was true that Daniel was marrying someone because he couldn't take care of them by himself. Daniel knelt in front of his son and told him the truth as gently as he could. Sometimes, he said, strength looked different than people expected. Sometimes it meant choosing what others didn't understand. Lucas hugged him and said it would be okay. The night before the wedding, Daniel didn't sleep. He packed quietly, folding their entire life into a few boxes. He stared at his reflection and barely recognized the man looking back. This wasn't how his story was supposed to go. The ceremony hall the next day was breathtaking, elegant, cold, the kind of place where love was assumed, not questioned. Daniel stood at the front, heart pounding, aware of every whisper, every stare. Then Olivia arrived. She was wheeled down the aisle, her expression calm, almost distant. The officiant began. The vows approached. Daniel braced himself for the final step into a life he hadn't chosen, but had accepted. That was when everything changed. Right before the final words were spoken, Olivia placed her hands on the arms of her wheelchair and stood up. The room froze. Gasps rippled like a shockwave. People leaned forward, stunned. The whispers vanished. Olivia stood steadily, confidently, and looked out at the room. She spoke calmly, clearly, and every word landed like a truth bomb. She explained that she could walk, that she had been able to for years. The wheelchair was a choice, a test. She said she had spent her life surrounded by people who wanted something from her. Money, status, access, sympathy. She wanted to know who would stay when there was nothing to gain. Daniel had been judged by everyone for marrying her, but she had been judging everyone too. She said Daniel never asked for money, never complained about the terms, never tried to impress her. He showed up, answered honestly, and endured humiliation without bitterness, all for one reason, his son. She said that was the kind of man she trusted. Then she turned to Daniel and said that this marriage was no longer an arrangement. The prenuptial agreement had already been rewritten, not to give him wealth, but to give him security, respect, and partnership. Daniel stood there stunned, tears burning his eyes, realizing that for the first time in years, someone saw him not as a failure, but as a good man who had been tested and did not break. The room remained silent, but it was no longer judgment, it was reflection. In the months that followed, life changed. Not overnight, not magically, but deeply. Lucas thrived. Daniel left the warehouse and returned to school, with Olivia's encouragement. Not as charity, as belief. People who once whispered now avoided eye contact. Others apologized. Some said nothing at all. Daniel didn't need validation anymore. He had learned that dignity wasn't lost by choosing survival. It was earned by enduring hardship without losing compassion. The truth was simple and powerful. It's where you find out who you really are. So ask yourself, when life strips everything away, when the world judges without understanding, when survival demands uncomfortable choices, who is really being tested? If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you see strength differently, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us share more stories that remind us all that real power often rises from the quietest perseverance.